Welcome back to What If Civilization Restarted. If you forgot, in the last episode we introduced Ruthenia, Krosnia, Saxic, Orxic, Ioxic, Metoxic, Lyopoxic, Ravakoya, Simdoria, Sejud, Cyanu, and Nylandia. Phew, that was a lot. Also, tensions are high between the two alliances of the MPC and the ETC. Let's get started. We start with Ottenburg and Azuria expanding toward each other. In fear of a territorial dispute leading to a greater war, the MPC brings the two nations as well as the rest of the alliance together in the capital of Cursia. In the meeting, they decide to create a buffer state between the two. Thus, the nation of Fior is founded, immediately joining the MPC. At this meeting, the MPC also creates human rights laws that all of their members must follow. These laws prevent nations from torturing their citizens or POWs in the outline of basic human rights. The human rights laws are later referred to as the Erie Conventions. In the Indian subcontinent, the nation of Harushia is officially founded by the Harushians, who left Ottenburg in the last episode looking for a place to practice their religion freely. Being a minority of Ottenburg and many other European countries, they weren't accepted in the continent. It was founded as the world's first democracy, allowing anyone among the Harushian religion to vote. The group is weak, so they decide to join an alliance. Due to the distance from the MPC, they instead apply for the ETC and are instantaneously accepted. The Rothic countries in Ruthenia heard of this and decided to create a shared currency and language among themselves to boast their abilities of cooperation, as well as signing the Red Alliance between themselves as a mutual defense pact if called upon, while also opening their borders to the other nations' militaries. Over in Africa, Jandor continues to expand due to King Janok II being an expansionist and eventually facing a civil war, with half the population wanting to join the MPC and the other half wanting to stay with the ETC. However, due to their contract Jandor signed to become a member of the ETC, the pro-MPC acts were quickly put out. Some of the pro-MPC extremists decided to, go and kill the king and take over. On the night of the assassination, the extremists are caught and interrogated. After finding out that their efforts were in the name of the MPC, the Jandoran king declares war on them the next day, with the rest of the EPC, including Sejud, Nylaria, Sanayu, and Harushia, joining soon after. The ETC claimed that the North Peace Council was unforgivable for disrupting their fragile peace. Then, the ETC requests Krosnia, Ruthenia, and Norlandia to all join the war, but they refuse. The Red Alliance does, however, decide to supply the ETC with weapons to fund their expansion efforts. To demonstrate their military might and scare the MPC, Harushia leads their army into modern-day Pakistan and surrounding areas, almost doubling the size of their nation. However, the new land only becomes rural farmland and wilderness. Ottenburg begins sending its troops into the East Mediterranean, preparing for an invasion of Jandor and the ETC. But their military is small after a large portion of their population left the country with the Rothic and the Harushians. Cursia sends troops into Sejud, Sanayu, and Nylaria to make a passage towards Jandor. Neither side could best the other, dragging battles to last weeks with no victor. Eventually, the MPC was able to carve a way through the Sinai to reach the Red Sea. Ottenburg's army is given the clear to invade Jandor. Upon reaching the shore of the capital of Jandor City, to their surprise, they find no army. Not wanting to waste a second, they began pillaging the city and ended up killing a third of the entire city's population. However, with all of the Ottenburg army in one city, all the Jandor army had to do was siege. By midnight, the never even moralized army surrenders to Jandor. The next week, all of the MPC and the ETC had heard of the Jandorian invasion. Many Jandors now felt it best if they left the war and did not risk losing more of their people. Cursia then sends diplomats trying to persuade the king to end the bloodshed. However, the king was now being threatened by Krosnia to stay in the war. While all of this is happening, Ruthenia and Krosnia take the opportunity of the great powers being at war to expand their nations. Ruthenia took all of the land around the White Sea, and Krosnia took lands to the north and to the east. Up north, the Harusian army reached Sejud, Sanayu, and Nylaria to aid against the enemy's army. However, they were far too late. A spearhead had been made into the Arabian Peninsula, taking much of it as well as taking the Sejud Trail. The large but slow Azurian army was now on their way to Jandor through the Sejud Trail in hopes of ending the war quickly. The Harusians hastily make their way to Jandor to help defend. In Jandor, revolts are now being held throughout the nation. Some Harusians and members of the Jandorian army are killed by protesters. Eurus hears of the revolts and sends their army to kill the Jandorian king. Baraza also sends their army. They make a spearhead into Jandor, heading towards the capital of Jandor in the Battle of the North. At first, it's incredibly successful for the MPC, but after reconstruction of the Jandorian army, they make a counteroffensive that pushes back towards the Red Sea, and a stalemate is set up around the coast. We now return to Ruthenia as they continue their expansion and push north, taking more of the Kola Peninsula and pushing towards the Baltic Sea. This angers Norlandia, who breaks off diplomatic ties with Ruthenia and starts preparing for war. With the war in Jandor being a stalemate, the forces of the MPC decide to re-aim focus on Arabia instead of Jandor, pushing into Sejud and capturing all of its Red Sea coast before turning their attention to Nylaria and Sanayu to cut off trade between the three nations and the Jandor entirely. This ends up backfiring, and the ETC retakes the Sejud Trail, although this victory would not last. The MPC army vastly outnumbered the ETCs and decided to make a suicide campaign into the ETC defenses, where after much blood, they took the entirety of the Sinai Peninsula and pushed into Nylaria proper. Because of these advances, Nylaria, Sanayu, and Sejud surrendered unconditionally, leaving Quercia to take part of the Nylarian coast. Sanayu becoming a puppet of Oldenburg, although with little to enforce it, Sanayu was de facto independent. Finally, Sejud would be allowed to keep full independence, except that the Sejud Trail would become Azurian territory. But due to the distance between it and Azuria, the trail would soon revolt. After this, the MPC war effort moved their focus entirely to Jandor. All of the presence in the Sinai was moved through the Sejud Trail to the MPC-controlled North Jandor. The MPC decided to fight and pushed into Jandor, taking a large portion of the north and the east. Seeing the MPC's great advance, a rebellion formed on the outskirts of Jandor that quickly gained ground. After many small skirmishes and battles, the MPC and the rebels had surrounded Jandor's capital, but the king still refused to surrender. Many Jandorian and Harusian troops had deserted and even joined the MPC's forces, but those remaining were the most fanatical supporters of the king, leading to the Second Battle of Jandor City, seeing the most brutal fighting of the war. After much bloodshed, a group of rebels made their way to the palace and murdered the king. After this, Jandor surrendered and was occupied by the MPC, with its fate to be decided at the future treaty. Now, the allyless Harusia surrenders to the MPC, realizing that the war was already lost, and signs the Treaty of Hornt, along with Jandor stating that their nations are now fully controlled by the MPC. They have restricted trade, they are no longer allowed to build militaries, they must adopt the Area Conventions, and must pay reparations. Furthermore, Jandor was blamed entirely for the war and lost land to the new nation of Nyorna, which was the territory in the north of Jandor. The war was so bloody that they decided to name it after the blood itself, calling it the Cardinal War. This was the most influential event in history at that point. The Jandorians and the Harusians were incredibly upset at the Treaty of Jandor City and started calling it the Treaty of Lies. During the course of the war, Ruthenia had taken much land and angered Norlandia. This would all come to a tipping point where Ruthenia conquered more lands towards the Baltic Sea, connecting a border to Norlandia, which declared war and started mobilizing their troops. Norlandian forces pushed into Ruthenia's newly acquired lands, making a spearhead towards the Ruthenian heartland. The Ruthenian army anticipated the attack and stationed their troops outside of Ruthenian territory. The Ruthenian push is incredibly successful, isolating Norlandia's main fighting force and laying siege to it in the city of New Ruthenia. After weeks of being starved, the main Norlandian army surrenders and are taken as POWs. After this, Ruthenian forces turned their attention towards Norlandia proper, pushing into the country from their newly acquired lands. Soon after, the Ruthenian army, at full force, took Norlandia's capital of Ypsiloka with little resistance. In the peace treaty, Ruthenia annexed Norlandian territory, giving it access to the Baltic Sea. In Episode 2, the great nation of Eurus had settled Madagascar. After the Cardinal War, the native population banded together to form the nation of Moravo, claiming that the island of Madagascar belonged to them. Eurus took pity on their tribal ways and partitioned a part of Madagascar for these nomads. The conflict ended peacefully, giving Moravo full independence. They even created a holiday to celebrate the peace between Eurus and Moravo. In the eastern Mediterranean, more specifically what we know as Lebanon and Cyprus, the tribes of the Carnage religion decided to join together as the Kingdom of Carnagia, in hopes of gaining influence and spreading the religion that preaches the importance of the lion throughout the world. But, although united by religion, the tribes never fully came together as one people due to long-standing rivalries between cities and general distrust of other regions of the kingdom. To make matters worse, piracy had become increasingly prevalent in the region and even invaded islands off the shore of Greece as piracy headquarters. They were known as the Carusian Horde. These pirates were ruthlessly tormenting the Carnage people with constant raids, stealing whatever wealth they had. The nation of Carnagia finally had enough and declared war on the curse of pirates, building up quite an impressive fleet in the process. The Carnage military thought it was powerful enough to take on the pirates, but they had gravely miscalculated their adversaries. The pirates had been building up a powerful army in preparation as well. In the Battle of Pirates and Lions, the pirates absolutely decimated the Carnagian fleet, destroying 90% of their warships and pushing them all the way back to Cyprus before starting another raid, which ended up killing 80% of the male population of Carnagia and about 40% of the female population. All of this while stealing from and torturing the people of Carnagia. After this, a coalition of nations, mainly Sejude, Nylaria, and Sanayu, came to help Carnagia and launched their armies into the region to take out the Carusian pirates and help the people who were under attack. After many battles, the coalition was able to defeat the pirates and destroy their presence for good. This conflict would be known as the Carusian Massacre. All pirates who were not killed in the fighting were either exiled or executed. After the Cardinal War, Alicia, an heir to the Ottenburg throne, embarrassed by their military weakness, rallies her supporters to leave and found a stronger nation. After reaching Jutland and surrounding regions, they crown her the queen. Ottenburg quickly sends out an ultimatum, demanding that they discuss the creation of this new nation. The queen decides to accept the ultimatum and returns to Ottenburg to discuss her new state. After much discussion, it is decided that Queen Alicia would be allowed to rule over her land with the use of only Ottenburg's military in return for a tax on all their purchases. Back in Europe, a band of tribesmen in the Far East have grown ever closer with each other through trade and advances in technology, and had almost even become one people, separated into many tribes. After seeing the successes of civilization through Africa, Europe, and Asia, the leaders of the three main tribes all joined together to form a collective union. To come up with a name, they combined the names of the three tribes, Bryce, Sivi, and Akvav, into Brycevav, proclaiming themselves to rule over all the land held by the Bressonian tribes. Many tribes in Brycevav have already traded closely and been on incredibly good terms with Ruthenia and Rothic nations. Because of this, Brycevav immediately signs into the Red Alliance, becoming allies with these nations and solidifying their position in the world. To conclude, we have the Cardinal War to destroy the ETC, Carusia, Brycevav, Carnagia, and Kuruzu were founded, a war to destroy the pirates of Kuruzu, the start of the Red Alliance, and more. Thanks for watching. Also, don't forget to subscribe.